Hello and welcome. This is Roger Royce with Silicon Valley Impact on Tel Radio. Thank you for being here. We're here today with Jean Winstel from the company Bioviva. He's going to talk to us about his company. This is Silicon Valley Impact. I'm your host, Roger Royce, and every week I speak with people who have a social impact on the local community, whether it's here in Silicon Valley or abroad, especially as it relates to technology. We look for entrepreneurs and influencers who use their powers for good, you might say, and do things for social impact. And we're really excited to have somebody who's made a big impact in the area of education. So first of all, welcome to the program. So Jean, maybe you could tell us a little bit about what you do and first of all, I guess your background on what your company does.
Well, I make some studies in terms of environment and sustainable development. I start working in the Caribbean as a marine reserve manager. For 2 years, I was dedicated to an NGO where I set up this marine park in St. Lucia, a very nice island. And this is where I realized that if I really wanted to have an impact on the environment, the question was not working on climate change or loss of biodiversity, but I had to work on human consciousness. And I was 25 years old, and I decided to stop everything, to go back to France, go back to my parents' house, and to start designing a board game dedicated to the history of life. And this board game was named Bioviva, which is now the name of the company, which means Viva Life. And the story is it starts like this. And now Bioviva is a company which is developing a catalog of more or less 150 products, all dedicated to environment, education, sustainable development, corporate social responsibility. And we are a 30 people company based in Montpellier, in the south of France. We also distribute our products in roughly 20 countries. They are translated in English, Spanish, German, Chinese, Hebraic, all kinds of languages, because we do believe that environment and education has no borders. So we definitely have to convince that we are so lucky to be alive on this earth that it should be enough to be happy. And this is what we try to do every single day.
Right. So, and you go by JT, is that right?
Yes, JT is better.
Okay. So JT, your games, so they're designed for children, is that right? And they're educational as well.
Yes, mainly for children, but not only. We also have very good family games. For example, we just finished a game which is called Climat Tic Tac, which has been designed by the GIEC. The GIEC, IEPCC experts that are right now in Glasgow for the COP26, and they asked us to adapt it to the general public, and so we did the first general public board game dedicated to climate change, to change the view, which a much positive way, and to understand that we can act directly with joy, with pleasure, and change the world. But you are right, most of our games are dedicated to children, because I do believe that it's much easier to try to change the mind of children instead of adults. It's much more difficult with adults. So as more young they are, more easy it is.
And these games, do they teach sustainable practices? Is that the general idea?
Yes, definitely. Because behind each Bioviva game, there's a very strong pedagogical and educational approach. For example, we have the 3A methodology. The first is A means apprendre, learn. First, you have to learn. Once you learn, you know, you understand. But learning is not enough. It's not because you learn that you act. Act is the end. But before acting, you need to get the earth in your heart, which means you need to get appropriation of the living earth inside your heart, on your body. And this is on what we are working on. Not only learning, but how do we appropriate, how do I understand the incredible story I'm just living on that time?
I see. Yeah, so it's learn and then the motivation and then the actual action.
Yes.
And the motivation I would guess would have to be maybe some sort of rewards based since it's a game, or maybe it's just the idea of making the planet a better place.
Yes, there are three things in three important points in a Bioviva game. The first one is education for us is making good to yourself, making good to humanity, and making good to the world. All our games do work on these three topics. So as soon as you play with a Bioviva game, you get some pleasure. You have some interaction with all the other players. We have a lot of cooperative games, not only competitive games. And we want to change the perception, the point of view regarding nature, environment, and so on. So it's a mix of different ingredients that makes the good recipe for a good game to pass what we call a moment of life.
Got it. Okay, well, that's really interesting. We're going to take a short break here in a minute, and then we're going to come back and talk about some of your more philanthropic and charitable activities. We're here today with JT from the company Bioviva, talking about some of his games and his educational initiatives to promote environmental awareness, especially in children. This is Roger Royce with Silicon Valley Impact on Tal Radio. We'll be right back. Go on. Okay, Roger Royce with Tal Radio, Silicon Valley Impact. We're back. We're talking with JT from Bioviva in France. You're in Paris, right, JT?
No, in Montpellier, in south of France.
Oh, Montpellier. Okay.
Much better.
I know here in the Silicon Valley, we think of everything as Paris when you think France. Right? Well, I really appreciate you being here today. Before the break, we were talking a little bit about your company, Bioviva, and 150 games it has translated into languages all over the world, teaching children about social responsibility, environmental awareness, what they can do to help combat climate change. But I know you do a lot more than that, JT. You've actually got your own foundation that also has a social, I guess we would say, purpose. Can you tell us about that?
Well, yes, actually, let's go back in year 2017. In Europe, we had this terrible migrants crisis. And I was fed up with seeing all these children just waiting on the boundaries, looking for some hope. And I decided to do something. And during one night, I wrote on a paper, I will offer 1 million educational games to these refugees. So the following morning, I said, oh, I wrote this, so let's do it. And we started. And we created the game. We translated them in Arabic. My colleague went to Syria, went to Lebanon, went to the refugee camps in order to train the trainees and also to give some educational lessons regarding the environment to these kids. And the feedback was so exceptional that we decided to follow, because at the beginning, it was only a project. It was not a foundation. But finally, we said, we should continue. And now Bioviva is a foundation which is developing educational programs. And the new big programs is the first educational program worldwide on biodiversity for children from 6 to 12 years old. under the United Nations program, which is called Rescue Biodiversity. I'm just starting this very, very big program. To tell you the truth, Roger, just before you call me, I had a call from the Présidence de la République Française, the French Republic presidents, saying, we want to meet you on the 2nd of December. So I'm very happy to announce you. It's a scoop for you in the Silicon Valley. You just don't
You heard
care,
it here.
but it's
You
okay.
heard it here
I'm
first,
happy with that.
folks, on Tel Radio. That's great. Well, congratulations on the success. Yeah, so France does have a refugee issue, doesn't it? Just like a lot of other.
Oh, we
parts
have
of the
no
world.
refugee camp in France. Italy has a lot, Greece has a lot, but we have some program to integrate refugees in France, but we have some hundreds or thousands of refugees, not more.
I see. And I think I see a theme here, even in your foundation, in your company, it's using gamification as education.
Yes.
And you said board games. Do you do this digitally as well? Or is it just on board games?
Good question. First of all, I just want to say that if we design board games is because we realize that each human being starts its life by playing. So a game is a very good way to learn and to change. Secondly, in terms of digitalization, yes, we did some, but not specifically for our games. Why? Because I want these children to be connected to nature and not to smartphones. It doesn't mean that we won't go to digitalization, but we have to do it on the proper way.
Well, you're onto something. I worry that the newer generations are losing that tactile sense, just the feel and the touch and the use of the hands.
Five senses. We have to go back to the 5 senses of a human body.
5 senses, absolutely, especially if you're teaching something that exists here in a real world and not out in the metaverse, like the environment.
Exactly. But it doesn't mean that we are against digitalization, but we start with a TV program of our best collection, which is a nature challenge. And we are right now on our way to meet with a TV broadcast in order to propose our family board games, but which is where you can play with your cell phone, but it's a frame with your family. You don't do it by yourself. You have to share, you have to discuss, you have to expose your arguments. You are not alone in your bedroom trying to kill any animals or the other. You understand?
Yeah. So I guess we could call this play to learn.
Yes.
In some sense, and in the other sense, it's play as a way of promoting family unity, it sounds like. So
yes.
It's all good. Well, that's great. It sounds like you've really taken, probably, like you said, that people are playing from the time they're born, and you're taking that natural inclination to play and using it for good, so that children can learn.
Exactly.
And also maybe make for some of the disadvantaged, make their life, like the refugees, make their lives a little bit less unpleasant. This is Roger Royce here on Tel Radio with Silicon Valley Impact. We're talking to JT from Bioviva. He's talking to us about some of his games and what he does in the world of social impact, especially in providing a way of making games that are environmentally conscious for kids. And we're going to be right back after this break. Who won? Hello, welcome back. Roger Royce, Silicon Valley Impact on Tel Radio. Every week we do a series with sometimes a local Silicon Valley personality. Today we're talking to JT Winstel. He's from Bioviva in Montpellier, France. But Silicon Valley is more of a concept than a geographic location. I like to think it's more of an idea and a mindset. Here in the Valley, we try to do things that change the world, but change the world for good. We try to change the world for good. And whenever we meet entrepreneurs that have a technology or an idea or a business that also has a good social impact, I consider that just the heart and soul of the Valley. And that's why we're talking to JT. Before the break, JT, you told us about your games. It's very impressive, 50 different products. They're games that really, I guess I called it play to learn. I didn't make that term up. but it teaches children a couple of things. You teach children socially responsible values like taking care of the environment through games. You also have games that families can play together. They're mostly board apps, so they're in the physical world, not so much in the metaverse. And we were talking during the break about how successful you've been, how popular you are in France. And I think you said you're #1 in French games sold in France. Is that right?
Yes, that's amazing. This year, it's just unbelievable for us. To give you an idea, we sold more than 2 million nature challenge card games, and they are games regarding biodiversity loss. This is interesting. It's not a game or on Donald or Mickey or whatever. It's a game about animals that are endangered. And now you cannot go into a school and not seeing a nature challenge game. And since this success appeared, we are now #10 in terms of a company producing games in France. After Lego, Playmobil, Mattel, Hasbro, #10 is Bioviva. So, and this is interesting because we are definitely dedicated to sustainable development. I created the company 25 years ago, and it took so many years to achieve it, and now we did it.
That's impressive. For just the reason that you said, this is a game, you're #1 in France, not only in games that have social purpose, you're the #1 French company selling French games. And you're competing with companies that don't have that real restriction. You're changing a whole generation of children, I think, is what it sounds like to me.
Can I give you some two anecdotes? The first one is that now some mothers send me letters or email saying, Mr. Winstel, I started my childhood by playing Bioviva. Your games changed my way of thinking the environment. And now I am so proud to send you this picture of my child playing Nature Challenge. There's no more success for me than this. The second anecdote, Roger, 25 years ago, I attended the toy fair in New York, and the New York Times select the Bioviva game as one of the top 10 games of the year. This was 25 years ago.
Amazing.
And I never had a success in the US, unfortunately.
Well, you're going to get there. What about other countries? Are you popular in other parts of Europe or other parts of the world?
We are actually, we are pretty good in Spain, in Italy, in Belgium, in Switzerland, in Quebec. I tried my best for 1.5 years in China because I have a whole catalog in Chinese because I was asked by the Chinese government to develop a global environmental program. But China is a specific country, and I prefer to go back to France before having some troubles. So we are pretty successful, but not enough, because I deeply think that Bioviva has something special in its DNA that the future is looking for. And this regards every human being.
Awesome. Well, that's too bad that you're not quite able to get traction in China yet. If there's ever a place that they could probably use a little bit of education on the environment, It sounds like it's China, right? Hey, what about the future? What's the future hold for you? What are you looking at?
Well, the very near future is to show our TV program, Nature Challenge, the mission, selected by a TV broadcast. The promo reel, the show is ready. I'm just looking for a courageous TV broadcast that say there is something very interesting, very educative, very modern, and I want this show. This is definitely what I'm looking right now for. To give you an idea, when Pokemon starts, it started with a video game, and very, very fast, they decided to create the cartoon and the card games. And it's the card games that make the unbelievable success of Pokemon. For Bioviva, it's a bit different. We started with the games, with board games, family games, but I'm sure that the future is not only on paper. It will be on TV, it will be on smartphone, it will be on many other supports, because what we try to do is to improve and increase the level of consciousness. That's it, but on a very positive and funny way.
Got it. Got it. Well, that sounds really exciting. You got a lot of big things ahead of you. Well, JT, we're sort of coming to the end of our time. I want to thank you for being here. This is really fascinating. It's impressive what you've done. I hadn't thought that. I've heard of gamification making changes. I hadn't realized that you've been doing this for 25 years. You've been doing making changes in education and the way people think through gamification. My hat's off to you. I congratulate you. I wish you great success throughout the world and here in the United States. Thank you, audience, for being here. This is Roger Royce with Silicon Valley Impact on TAL Radio, and we'll see you next time.